Welcome to my views on news, another video for you. Firstly, Shire viewers, what is happening on this front? Yesterday, I reported that fighting was ongoing around or less than 10 kilometers away from Shire city. Has ENDF made any progress? Has EDF made any progress? We have some details for you. Indirectly, Tigray government officials spoke today about Shire. Secondly, viewers, we have a new story about some key meetings ongoing in Washington, D.C. about Ethiopia. Though the meetings are about loans, grants, Ethiopian economy, but these meetings will have a direct impact on Ethiopian government's ability to continue this war. What is happening there? And lastly, we are Somalia, where while operation against Al-Shabaab is ongoing, those who are criticizing are being arrested. Like we are seeing in Ethiopia, the journalists who are questioning Ethiopian government's narrative about war in northern Ethiopia, about Ethiopian government's crackdown on Fano, are being arrested. Same is going to happen, same is starting to happen in Somalia, and a local district commissioner was assassinated by Al-Shabaab in an attack today. Firstly, viewers, Shire, what is happening on Shire front? By the way, rumors are abundant about Shire. Shire fallen, ENDF inside Shire, EDF inside Shire, Shire-Aksum road cut off, and EDF, ENDF on their way towards Aksum from Shire. You see in comment section, several people challenge my reporting. They say, Sajid, you don't know anything about this war. EDF, ENDF are about to reach Aksum and you are just talking about Shire. People question about Adigrat as well. But what we have been reporting, after due verification. That is why largely reporting has been correct. We reported yesterday that fighting was around or less than 10 kilometers away from Shire. TDF trying to push back EDF, ENDF. Today, indirectly, Tigray government officials spoke about Shire. Indirectly, I would say. I think the purpose of today's statement was to clarify that Shire is under TDF control. Professor Kindeya of Tigray External Affairs Bureau just an hour ago tweeted about a drone strike in the outskirts of Shire. He said that on Tuesday, a drone strike was carried out in the outskirts of Shire city, which led to some civilians killed. Two women, some civilians injured, not killed, correction. He said 2 women were injured in the drone strike, and injured were shifted to Sohal hospital in Shire, but there is lack of medicine at the hospital in Shire. So, Professor Kindeya indirectly claimed today that Shire and its outskirts are under the control of Tigray Defense Force. That is why drone strike was conducted on the outskirts of Shire. Now, how much is the distance between Shire city and outskirts? That depends upon people's definition of outskirts. But 10 kilometers is not outskirts. So it means fighting is still at a distance from Shire city. Maybe in the outskirts or just a few kilometers away from outskirts. Tigray has indirectly confirmed its control of Shire city. Other side has not shared anything, any visual confirmation. If ENDF and Amhara forces can share pictures from Adi Hagre, from Shiraro, from Adinabrid. Of course, they can share pictures, videos from Shire as well, if Shire is under their control. But no such material shared by ENDF side, Amhara side so far. So that is why Frontline is still at a distance around 10 kilometers away from Shire city. Secondly, viewers, some key meetings are taking place in Washington DC about Ethiopia. I always say that if this conflict in Ethiopia is to be resolved through dialogue, US is the country which has a leverage, which can play a role. Other countries largely have no leverage. African Union has no leverage. EU, some leverage. Main leverage is held by US government. Why? Because financial institutions financial institutions will make decisions after consultation with US. And Ethiopian government is in talks with IMF, World Bank. We know that before the start of the third round of fighting on the 24th of August, between January and August this year, Ethiopia received several grants from World Bank, loans as well. And Ethiopia was in talks with IMF for some loans. Why? Because Ethiopia was saying that it was ready for talks, that there was ceasefire and talks were underway. But after the start of the third round of fighting, all these loans and grants have been suspended. Though World Bank spoke, I think yesterday, and World Bank said that it would continue its support for countries like Ethiopia, though there are conflicts in the country. And now, between October and December, Ethiopia must pay around $600 million as loan payment. Ethiopia has been in talks with some countries for rescheduling of this loan. Creditors are waiting for the outcome of Ethiopia IMF talks. If Ethiopia IMF talks succeed, the creditors will reschedule this loan, which Ethiopia has to pay around $600 million. So that is why ongoing talks, which are ongoing in Washington, are between Ethiopian government and IMF World Bank representatives. Ethiopian Finance Minister Ahmed Shide and Governor of National Bank are in Washington DC. Their meetings are being held. If Ethiopia IMF talks succeed, creditors will reschedule Ethiopian payment of $600 million to the creditors. That is why talks in Washington matter a lot for Ethiopia, for Ethiopian economy, because the economy is under pressure. It's a war-driven economy because government has to purchase weapons, government has to spend on military, large portion of the budget is going to military. These mobilizations of army forces and military equipment obviously require money. So, economy under pressure. Birr is losing its value in black market. Birr is trading at around 100 birrs for $1. At this crucial time, if Ethiopia has to pay $600 million, obviously it will be a further burden, a pressure on the Ethiopian economy. That is why talks are being held in Washington DC. US has a leverage here. Financial institutions have US backing when it comes to deciding loans, grants for countries. So this is the time for US to play its role in convincing Ethiopian government and Tigray regional government as well to start talks. That's what happens. We'll update you if there is a positive outcome of the talks or otherwise in Washington DC. Lastly, we're Somalia, where journalists are being arrested because operation against Al-Shabaab is ongoing. Whoever is speaking against the government's moves is being arrested. 3 days ago, Somalia's government banned, suspended some websites, some news outlets which were allegedly sharing Al-Shabaab's statements, Al-Shabaab's position about the ongoing operation. Several websites and telegram channels were suspended, and journalists were barred from covering Al-Shabaab's statements. Journalists are protesting. Today in Mogadishu, Abdullah Momin, who is a Secretary General of Somali Journalist Syndicate, SJS, was arrested in Mogadishu. SJS office was also stormed by security forces in Mogadishu a few hours ago. Why? Because Momin criticized Somalia's government's decision to ban coverage of Al-Shabaab's activities. So he is in detention, he is in custody. The journalist bodies, international journalist bodies are condemning this move, that this is an attack on press freedom in Somalia. But not something new in the Horn of Africa, where we know that in Ethiopia, journalists being arrested, Miaza in prison for third time. Others as well, Solomon Shome, then Fitti editor, Dasalan, in prison as well. And several, it's a long list of journalists who were arrested, who are in prison in Ethiopia. Same is happening in Somalia too. Meanwhile, Al-Shabaab has claimed responsibility for assassination of a district commissioner. Sayyid Ali Ibrahim was killed today in a bomb blast in Lower Shabelle today. In Koriole district, he was working as district commissioner, and he was killed in a bomb explosion. So Al-Shabaab's target killing continues. This is Al-Shabaab's way of demoralizing government officials, that it hits top brass of local, regional and federal administration. We know that in Mogadishu, Mogadishu police commander Farhan was killed in an ID explosion a few days ago, and Colonel Mahdi has been appointed as the new Mogadishu police commander. So this is testing time for Somalia's government officials, security chiefs, politicians as well, because Al-Shabaab is hitting them directly. These security officials are laying down their lives. On daily basis, we are receiving reports of government officials, military officials being assassinated. So that is why this offensive against Al-Shabaab should be backed by the parties in the region, by international community as well. Thank you for watching.